Hi, welcome to the Natasha Knows Show. I'm your host, Natasha P. Knows. Today we celebrate Women's History Month and health awareness. So join me as I interview some amazing women sharing their stories. You don't want to miss it. Natasha Knows. Natasha Knows. You know what it is. Natasha Knows. Hi, welcome back to the Natasha Knows Show. I'm your host, Natasha P. Knows. Our next guest is a longtime Teaneck, New Jersey resident whose family was the second African American family to have moved into that neighborhood. She has also worked in the field of television, public relations, nonprofits, and in education programs to spread the arts in New York and New Jersey area. Please welcome Miss Allison Davis.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for being a guest on the
Oh,
Natasha
thank you
Knows
for
Show.
having me. This is
Yeah.
a thrill.
Okay, so I have usually like an icebreaker. The first question is usually the common question that I ask my guests. And it is, how are you doing?
I'm doing really, really well. This is the first time in a long time that health-wise I feel great.
You
And
look great.
oh, thank you. And I feel like I'm in a good place in my own life. Children gone, and getting an opportunity to spend time with friends, and then obviously spending time with my husband. So I'm in a good place.
Yes, and I love the new look because I'm staring at you because of your radiance and your beauty. Okay, that's another story. But you used to have like an afro and things like that, and you cut your hair, and now you have like your natural beauty and the natural essence of the gray coming. It's like really becoming.
No, thank you. This was not an easy decision for me, but I was a little tired of dyeing it, and I won't. I'm not gonna lie about it. I dyed my hair, and then I realized that I was probably going to gray like my parents, and I loved my parents' gray hair. So I had our barber, my husband and I share a barber, and I said, could you just see what's under this dye? And she started snipping, and she said, oh, I think it's going to look nice. I said, snip it off then. So thank you, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
This is me.
Yes, it's you. It's all you. So, growing up in Teaneck, many people they don't know that Teaneck was the first school district in the nation to desegregate its schools. So, can you talk to us a little bit about growing up in Teaneck, New Jersey, in the 50s?
Yeah, absolutely. My family moved to Teaneck in 1958, and we moved right across the street from the Bryant School on Intervale Road, and I was in kindergarten. And my dad worked for the AFL-CIO and really lived in Washington during the week and came home during the
Wait,
weekends.
let's back up. I'm sorry. For viewers that don't know what the
AFL-CIO is the American Federation of Labor Congress Industrial Organizations. It's the largest labor union. It's actually the consolidation of many labor unions belong to the AFL-CIO. And at the time...
So the Teamsters, excuse me, so the Teamsters in
are
New
not.
York City and all that are...
Not the Teamsters. The Teamsters were separate in terms of...
So that's a different union.
Different union. Okay. AFL-CIO is the newspaper guild. It's the... at one point, the UAW. I mean, it's an.
So it's really big.
It's a really big, and the AFL and my father was with the AFL-CIO for many years, and then became. He was with Johnson. And started the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission under Johnson in the mid-60s. But in the 50s...
So your dad was a part of that?
Oh, my father was, he actually spent a fair amount of time marching with King and, would come home, but we came from Harlem.
Did you ever meet him before?
I'd never met King.
Oh,
but
I was going to say.
But I met, people
Many
like
people, I'm sure.
Robert Kennedy. I
Uh-huh.
met, but my father wanted to deposit his family in a very safe place. So in
Right.
1958, we moved to Teaneck.
Hmm.
I was 5, and I went to school at the Bryant School from kindergarten through 6th grade. Well,
Hmm.
when I got to 6th grade, I was told that it was going to be an all 6th grade school.
Oh, wow.
And that was because the town wanted to integrate or desegregate
Right.
the school system because the school system had become very segregated
Right.
because of neighborhoods.
Yes, yes.
And so I was a member of that first class
Hmm.
of 6th graders. Um, to be very honest with you, we didn't know what we were doing at that time. I mean,
Right.
of course, history tells another story.
Exactly.
But my mother just said, get up and go to school.
Hmm.
And I had gone to the same school since kindergarten, so for me, it wasn't all that different.
Right. So you were one of, I read your bio, and in your bio, it was very descriptive, and you said that you were like one out of maybe two African American students in your school or something like that, or
No,
there were a
that was a
few?
little later.
Oh,
That
that
was
was
a
later.
little later.
Oh, okay.
But in Bryant School, it was um, a beautiful mosaic of students from Teaneck,
Okay.
and it was great. I mean, I
Hmm.
still maintain some friendships with many of the people that
That's nice.
came from different schools
Hmm.
to Bryant for the Central 6th grade.
Hmm.
Um, after that 6th grade experience, my family moved to
Hmm.
Maryland,
Oh,
and we moved to Silver Spring, Maryland. And at the time, we were the second African American family in that community,
wow.
and it was a real change for us
Hmm.
because Maryland is below the Mason-Dixon line, and it
Hmm.
was pretty segregated as well. The
Hmm.
reason why we had not moved to Maryland prior to that was there were, number one, no fair housing laws, so we couldn't move where we could afford to move. And number two, the schools had been very segregated,
Right.
and there was no integration in the schools. So when the schools were integrated, that's when my parents moved to Maryland. And uh, I went to a high school with 640 students in my senior class,
Mm.
and there were 7 African Americans out of the
Wow.
640.
Well, I recall a moment going back when I was in high school. I relocated for about a year and I moved to Alexandria, Virginia, and I attended T.C. Williams High School, which I'm pretty sure you're
I know
familiar
it.
with.
You
Remember the
sure?
Titans, where
Yep.
Denzel Washington
Yes.
played the lead role of the coach? I actually attended that school, and it's different going to school in the South, or versus the North.
You're
I
right.
definitely
You're
could
right.
say that. But you're a journalist. You used to work on for the Today Show,
And nightly
so
news.
and nightly news, and
Yes.
your background is so like huge.
Well, because
Uh,
I told you, because
that
I'm old, and when you're
no, you're
old, the
not old.
background.
You're seasoned. We're
Okay, okay.
seasoned. Can you talk to us about your experience? Like who, before we go there, who inspired you or what inspired you to become a journalist?
I started to become very interested in current events when I was in 1st grade.
Hmm.
My father would come home and he'd, ask us what we had read in the paper or what we knew about global affairs, and we had to have an answer.
Hmm.
So I was very, very inspired initially by my dad. And then beyond that, when we moved to Maryland, I started babysitting for a neighbor who
Okay.
was, in fact, a columnist for the Washington Daily News.
Okay.
And she was, and so I would babysit for her 2 kids while she wrote her column.
Hmm.
And so I became very, very inspired by the fact that she was making a living
Hmm.
at this and making a pretty good living as well. So
Right.
that really said to me, and then I was on the school newspaper in high school and then beyond that.
Could you hold that thought?
Hmm.
We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back to the Natasha No Show.
What's up, everybody? This your boy Big Zay, co-owner of A Squad Rebel Radio. Listen, I just want to take this time out to thank everyone for their support of the station. We're growing, we're work in progress. I just want to thank you all out there everybody watching, just thank you so much for your support. I mean, what's a good business without support? No business at all. I just want to say thank you. Continue to listen to us every day. The whole staff, we do everything just for you, to give you awareness in the community and give you good old music and giving a platform for those who can't reach out and do certain things. We give you that platform, all right? I just want to thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. And continue to listen to A Squad Rebel Radio, the most talked about internet radio station in the land. Peace.
8 Squad Rebel Radio.
The most talked about internet radio station in the land.
Hi, welcome back to the Natacha Show. Today's guest I have Allison Davis, who was just telling us about her time in Maryland, when you moved to Maryland and things to that effect. And you,
yeah, well, you had asked me and what inspired me to go into journalism,
right.
And it, as I mentioned, it was a columnist from the Washington Daily News who I babysat for. I babysat her 2 children while she wrote her columns, and I was fascinated by that. And then I got involved in my school newspaper, as many people did, and then as I looked to figure out where I was going to school, I purposely went to Boston University, where they have one of the best, if not the best, School of Communications, and I graduated from their School of Communications with a degree in journalism.
With a degree in journalism, okay. So you worked on the Today Show, as I stated before. You worked with Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences on or off the set?
You know, I worked at NBC News for well over 30 years. And so, you know, I started at Nightly News, and I worked with Linda Ellerby, who remains a dear friend.
Yeah.
Remains a dear friend. And then ultimately ended up on the Today Show as the set writer-producer, and working with, at that time, Tom Brokaw for a hot second, and Jane Pauley, and then Jane Pauley and Bryant Gumbel, and then Bryant Gumbel and Deborah Norville, and then Deborah Norville. And,
I remember all of these names, so that's why I said we're both seasoned. I remember all of these people.
So I worked with these guys, and I got up in the morning at 4, and was lucky enough to travel with the shows. So I was, you know, I actually wrote most of the Today Show Goes to Africa.
Wow.
I wrote the Today Show in Cuba. I wrote the Today Show on the Orient Express.
I remember that one.
So I was the Today Show in Australia. So for me, it was a remarkable time in my life where I got a chance to see the world. I also did stories that I was extremely proud of, and thankfully was recognized for awards as well. So for me, it was just a wonderful time and a wonderful opportunity.
Now, one day on the set, both Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric was having a conversation, and they were having like this deep conversation about the internet, which was fairly new at the time. And then all of a sudden, the whole concept of Ask Allison had come about, and it started trending because Katie Couric had invited you on set in front of the camera and said, well, let's ask Allison, what is the internet about? So tell us that your feelings in that very moment, if I'm pretty sure you can remember.
I do, and I remember it a lot differently than they remember it.
Okay. Well, tell us your rendition of it.
First of all, I spent most of my time in the control room, and I had done a segment. Now, we're talking 23 years ago.
Yeah, I know. I remember.
So,
I told you, I remember all of this.
Yeah, so I had done this segment on the show, which started to have them think about the internet. Now, I was on the internet in 1984,
I think you said like 8 or 9 years before.
And so I was one of the first users of AOL, one of the first users of CompuServe. And so I, wanted to introduce the show to the internet. So we decided to add this email address. And so they didn't, they were looking at it, and I had written it out phonetically, so
Right.
that at sign I said was at.
Yeah.
And they did fine. And then during there's a break in the show that most people don't know about. It's called the co-op.
Okay.
And it's when a lot of stations go to local news. And at this point, if you don't have a local news station, if you're in a place where they don't have local news, they're just kind of sitting back on the couch and having a good time. So that's what that whole exchange was about. So Brian said, so what was that, we just said, and
Right.
and what you didn't hear in the commercial, it turned out to be a BMW commercial, but what you didn't hear in the commercial was Bryant, Katie kept saying, well, no, let's ask Allison. No, let's ask Allison. Allison. I'm in the control room.
Right.
And Bryant says, she can't say anything in less than 10 seconds. Don't ask Allison. But you don't see that in the commercial.
Right.
Bottom line is
I remember
that,
them, excuse me if I may interject, I remember them both in the car, in the BMW
okay,
car.
so then let's fast forward 23 years.
Yeah.
And now they're in this new BMW electric car.
So that wasn't the first scene or
No, the first scene was
Ellen-
1990, was 21 years before.
Wow.
And they're
okay.
showing them in the control room.
Right.
You don't see the two other people who were on the set at
Yeah,
the time, which was Al Roker, a big fat Al Roker,
Right,
and Elizabeth Vargas. They were both on that set at the time, but Elizabeth Vargas was working at ABC, and you didn't want to show her, and
Right.
and Al Roker didn't want you to see how fat he was
Oh, my
because he had
goodness.
lost a lot of weight.
Right.
So they cut those two out of the commercial, and they just had the two, Katie and Bryant, and then they decided to share that
Right.
episode in the commercial and then do the car when they said ask Allison. And I have to tell you that some of the tweets were amazingly funny. Like,
Yeah.
poor Allison,
Right.
will she ever get promoted? Is she still in that little control room?
Well,
It
it
just
was
went on
trending
and on.
because it was over 1.6 million views that actually viewed it,
Oh, but it even went beyond that. It was, according to Adweek, it was one of the best Super Bowl commercials ever.
Ever. Yeah, I heard that too.
And I was like,
and that was what, Super Bowl 49 or something like that?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
2 years ago. So
Yeah.
around this time 2 years ago.
I'm
so.
like, I'm thinking Super Bowl 49 was like way, that goes to show I'm not a football fan. I mean, shout out to everybody that's a football fan, but I'm definitely not a football fan. So,
Me neither.
so I'm thinking like Super Bowl 49, was that like maybe 5 years ago? Maybe it was 10 years ago. But you're saying it was 2 years ago.
It was this
can't-
particular commercial was 2 years ago. Yeah.
Right.
Well, actually, it was. I want to say maybe it was. I apologize. No,
Maybe
it
more
was
than that, right?
No, it was 2015. So 3 years
Oh,
ago.
okay.
2015 was that commercial.
Wow.
And I saw it when it aired, and I just almost tossed up my cookies because it was like, And then I started to hear from people I have not seen since second grade.
Yeah.
And they were like,
sure.
"Oh, I know, oh my God!" I was like, "Okay, calm
So
down."
now you know what they have to do. They have to make a Ask Allison with actually you in the commercial.
Oh no. But I'll tell you what I'm driving.
Yeah, right.
I'm driving a BMW.
Well, that's good. Yeah, there goes your promotion, BMW promotion. So talk to us a little bit about how, being that you were traveling the world and things to that effect, how did you balance family life with work life?
That was difficult, but I will tell you, my husband. My husband is an amazing, amazing man, and I guess since we had two boys, he used to say to me, "You go out and slay the dragons. I will make sure that these boys, are raised right." And he did. When I could take the family, I did, but for the most part, it was my husband who he was on the PTO at schools. He picked them up. In fact, my children went to an after-school program, and you know, everybody used to say, "Oh, that poor widower," thinking that I was
Oh,
dead.
right. Oh my goodness.
And then one day I went to pick up one child, and because I was home early and went to pick up the child, and the woman and the worker at the after school care said, "May I help you?" And had it not been for the little boy going, "Mommy, mommy, mommy,"
Right.
he would still be in that child care
Oh
because
my
they wouldn't let
goodness.
me have him,
Right.
having never seen me. But you know, when they got to be teenagers, and my husband was like, "I'm not into this teenage thing,"
Right, right.
then I came home to kind of whip him up in shape.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to be right back to the Natasha Knows Show. Hi, welcome back to the Natasha Knows Show. I'm your host, Natasha P. Knows. And today's guest, I have Allison Davis, who is so beautiful and radiant. And she's definitely educating us about journalism and working with Bryant Gumbel, Katie Couric, Al Roker, and many others. So, with that said, out of all the people that you work with, a number of people, who haven't you worked with yet that you would like to work with?
Ooh. You know, I can truthfully say that you know, I was a segment producer for the Today Show, and you know, I met all of my heroes.
Wow.
You know, and was disappointed by some of my heroines.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, I mean, you know, very short story. I love James Taylor,
James Taylor.
the singer, and he came on the show, and I pretended to be the makeup artist so I could touch his face. I had never done that
I
before.
love it. So walk us through that moment. Were you
Well,
blushing on?
Well,
like,
actually, I was doing it poorly.
Oh.
And he was choking, and I said,
Because before they had the powder that you just slap on your
That's
face.
what I was doing. I was slapping his face, and he said, he was the nicest guy. And I said, look, I'm not the makeup person. He goes, I
Right.
know. And then, you know, I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Maya Angelou, and
Wow.
and still have many of the letters and books that she signed for me. So it's hard to say. I mean, you know, I've had an incredible career.
Yeah.
And the Today Show is the Today Show. So,
Right.
you know, you get a chance to meet and to deal with some extraordinary people with extraordinary talents.
Yes, yes. And I have an extraordinary individual, Allison Davis, on stage with me right now. So with that said, tell us what are you doing now? What's up next for you? Any events coming up? Your social media sites?
I can do all of those. I can answer all of those.
Okay.
So I transitioned into something that, you know, I enjoy. I'm the executive director of Arts Horizons. Arts Horizons is a extraordinary organization that puts teaching artists in schools and after-school programs, hospital schools, senior centers. We started out as an organization that actually did assemblies, and we have expanded through the years to put teaching artists in residencies. I'm also a big advocate for arts education and arts integration. Arts integration is important, particularly in this state, because what arts integration does is it actually brings that level of creativity into traditional subjects like math and science and English.
Right.
And it's a big move now across the country, but New Jersey is leading, I think, the charge in trying to get people to integrate the arts in ways that will make them much more creative.
Excuse me, now it's called, it was STEM, which is science, technology,
engineering
and math, and now it's STEAM because it
But
included
this
the
is
arts.
not,
That's so important.
It's so important because it's important for all children to be creative. And that's what the arts does.
Yeah.
The arts helps all children become creative.
yeah,
But it's also for lifelong
self-creativity.
learners
Yes,
like
definitely,
us
definitely.
to engage in the arts so we can continue to be creative.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I am a big fan of this move for arts integration. So that's what I've been doing, and our programs are in New York and New Jersey. We do a lot of programs in places like Harlem, Bed-Stuy.
So you go
And
all over
we're
the
all
five
over the
boroughs of
five
New York.
boroughs, exactly.
That's excellent.
And we're beginning some programs in East Ramapo as well. So we're doing some really good stuff out there.
Nice.
And our teaching artists are just amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
They
I've
not
attended
only,
a few of your
yes,
events, and it is wonderful. I
yeah.
mean, it's like the content that's there and the creativity of the artists and things to that effect, and just the volume of people, the diversity and stuff. It's like amazing. Tell us, how can we follow you on your social media
Well,
sites?
my social media is primarily, Twitter, it's at Coopty, Coopty. And I'll tell you, Coopty is a combination of my children's names, Cooper and Tyler.
Okay.
And a few years ago, I started my own production company. And we do a lot of work with nonprofits in around the country. We're doing some stuff with an organization called Say Yes to Education, where we produced videos to help kids who are underserved in communities get into college. So we've been very, very active in the nonprofit world in telling their stories. I shoot and edit,
Yeah,
and
so
and
like
love
you
to
do
do
it
that.
all.
I love to do that, and I've taught. I've taught on the college level, both at CUNY Graduate School of Journalism and Howard University. So, and then I'm still involved with young people. I'm one of the founders of the National Association of Black Journalists, and that organization, I am a mentor to many students.
Wow. So could you spell out your social media sites for?
Yes, it's at Twitter. It's on Twitter. It's at
And then you
Coopty, Coopty.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook, but that's kind of closed to just primarily journalists.
Right. Okay.
And
But
and I
say,
do
for instance, if I wanted
Instagram,
to
but I
hire
gotta
you
tell you,
or something like that, I would go to Coopty.
it's Coopty. It's www. Dot Coopty. It's Coopty.com.
Okay.
And there's a info thing. It tells a little bit about who we are.
Okay.
And the site also shows my husband's a drone operator, so we've added that to our repertoire, if you will.
Nice, yeah.
And he's a licensed drone operator and does a great job.
My son was studying to become Homeland Security and into drones and stuff too. That's interesting.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
we're running out of time. Unfortunately, I would love to sit with you, have
This
some
has been
coffee
such a
or something,
joy,
or
Natacha.
some tea, and I'm just like this. Okay. Well, thank you for being a guest on the Natacha Knows Show. I would love to have you come back and tell us all about
Anytime.
some of your more experiences that you're going to create, I'm sure. But again, thank you for being a guest on the Natacha Knows Show.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for watching the Natacha Knows Show. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. for Rise and Fios Channel 26. Please check your local listing.